Good afternoon, LinkedIn friends, Value First Nation. Welcome to another episode of Value First Delivery with Erin Wiggers. Happy Wednesday, Erin. How are you?
Happy Wednesday. Yeah, I should have worn my orange. Next week, I'm going to wear orange.
Next week. Yeah. I think it's going to catch on soon.
Sure.
But last week we set the tone talking about the managed services trap. I say set the tone, but I feel like we're probably going to increase the tone a little bit today
Right.
with this first. So the next part of the series, 7 commitments related to the Value First Delivery manifesto. So I'm going to read number 1, some related bullets, and then we'll dive in.
Let's do it.
Um, Commitment number 1: we will prioritize outcome transformation over requirement fulfillment. We believe that the true purpose of service delivery is enabling meaningful change, not just completing tasks. We commit to focusing on the outcomes customers need to achieve rather than simply delivering what's specified in agreements. This means we will define success in terms of business impact rather than service delivery metrics. We'll adapt our approach when requirements aren't achieving the intended outcomes rather than rigidly following initial specifications. We will measure and report on transformation progress rather than just activity completion. We'll take responsibility. We will take responsibility for connecting our work to actual business results rather than limiting responsibility to deliverable completion. And we will design every interaction to move customers closer to their desired outcomes rather than just fulfilling contractual obligations. It's hard to imagine that there's 6 more commitments after this. I feel like that was everything, but what there piqued your interest as far as something we should dive into first?
Yeah, I think the commitment to outcomes that you have a responsibility in seeing come to fruition, and aligning around that first. I think because I've seen a lot of clients come into like a discovery process or a scoping process, and they're uh, tech savvy enough to be dangerous, and they're a little over prescriptive, like they think they know what they want. um I want a website, I need some automation to do XYZ. And I think when you frame it as, okay, well, we need to kind of zoom out and look at what are we trying to accomplish with those things? Like, what is the change in your daily operations that is going to be a result of what you're saying you want? Um, I think it just sets you up. It sets everyone up to be happier, honestly, because at the end of the day, they're paying you to be the expert. And so if you just build what they told you to build, and it's not accomplishing the goal, that's still kind of on you. Because you're like, you have to be the expert in the room and say, like, maybe you don't need a custom coded action for that. Actually, like, you could, change your process, do XYZ. Like, I think what it really emphasizes is there's a lot of nuance to how you get to the outcome. The requirements tend to be more fluid than people are willing to admit and or accept, um, because you kind of have this idea of, oh, I need to know everything first, and then I'll get in and I'll do those things, and that'll be that. And I guess just my background as a developer, the best laid plans, I'm telling you, like so many times I'm like, oh, that's just a quick fix. And I get in there and I'm like, oh, actually, this is like connected to this over here. And if I change that, that has all these downstream consequences. And so I think framing it as outcome first primarily aligns you around what's actually important to get out of the engagement, because it's not tasks and click up and stuff. That's not what
Yeah.
and then it also kind of gets everyone on the same page as far as, you know, we're gonna make the best decisions to steer us towards that goal until we get there. And if that means changing tactics, if that means we see that something's not working, um, you kind of have to build in a little bit of that uh, comfort with ambiguity. And I think that's, again, something I'm good at because I've been a developer for so long that like I know that I there's no way I can see all of the different paths, just from the outset. And so yeah, it's kind of a fundamental shift though in
Oh, that's huge, right?
like and I think I was guilty of this even um with so previous iterations of my app that I think I've shown you before, where a lot of what I had done in the past was strictly requirements. Like this is an app for solutions architects to come in and build the exact requirements that we need. And kind of just realized along the way that number one, salespeople can't get there because that's not their job. They're not supposed to know all the requirements. And also, if the salespeople can't articulate it, then the client sure can't either. Like they're not going to be able to tell you how those requirements meet their goals. And so, yeah, I think with this latest iteration of my app, DealWiser, I added the two extra kind of steps of project types and outcomes, where it's a little more like the taxonomy is just a little different. So you can kind of wrap your head around what the different requirements could be based on them rolling up into these other kind of categories. And that was a huge unlock for me. Frankly, I'm mad at myself that I did not come to that conclusion earlier. But yeah, I think it was really crucial to bridge the gap between business speak and HubSpot solutions architect speak.
Yeah.
And that's a gap that is very much needed to be addressed.
It certainly does. And I think we're starting to see it addressed in various spots, but it is a fundamental shift, related to this whole part of any engagement. And because whether you like it or not, AI is here, and it itself is evolving like faster than anything we've experienced before. It's allowing every software that we could come into contact with to evolve faster than ever before. And our humans, like you start to unlock some of those capabilities related to working with AI. You get a month in, and like, of course, like you get access and you unlock part of this. Like all of a sudden, the scope like could become like meaningless. Like you're just building for the bygone age, right? And that's where if we put ourselves in a spot where it's like, all right, this is the stuff that we have to get done,
Mhm.
And the contract reads as if it's not successful unless we get that stuff done.
Right.
Both parties are in like, oh, I guess that's what we got to do. And
Right.
now we feel super uncomfortable because we know it's not the right thing to do. We
Right.
see all this value happening, right? And leaders especially, like SaaS has kind of like this whole idea that it's just like get the quick wins, right? Like just leads to this kind of behavior where it forces you into this like activity focused,
Mhm.
mode. And I'm curious, as you've started to go that way with your app. And by the way, like I'm still learning some of this too, is in terms of like everything is supposed to be like customer problem focused, and then you try to solve their problem. And when they come in saying, "Oh, I need help with leads," then you try to like go right to that problem, right? But when you dig in, it's actually like they want to grow revenue. So
Right.
many ways to do that. So
Right.
as you're starting to build that into your app, um, like this emergent thing that's happening where all of a sudden an outcome could change, right?
Mhm.
Like, how are you thinking about like systematizing that?
Yeah. So I think um, the way I kind of approach it in the app is anything anything in the that is in the scope is a standard deliverable. Like anything that uh, is part of a product that's a deliverable that I have done before, or the user has done before. Um, and so you have an idea of like this is what it's going to cost me as a business to do this thing. And so when you look at it like that, you can kind of take the blocks out and replace them with other things based on the mutual kind of understanding of value where this was going to take 15 hours and I was going to have to do it all in AWS, and it was going to be infinitely complicated versus, oh well, we can just tack on this integration, or you can upgrade your HubSpot and now we can do everything in serverless functions or custom coded actions or things like that. um, Now I can be objective in that and say, okay, well, this was only going to, or this one was going to cost me XYZ, as far as like time, effort, expertise. Then I can swap that out, and maybe the new block is way less effort. Maybe it's, not going to take me nearly as long. Now I can add more value in those spaces. And kind of, I think that's the key to kind of making sure everyone is happy with what's going on. Um, because you can throw in a little delight or add something from the wish list that maybe was going to be like a phase two thing. Um, so I think having that agility, the ability to be objective about those standard pieces that you're swapping out, is really critical, just so that value is aligned on both sides.
Yeah. Um, it's like that alignment is really everything,
Right.
right? And at the same time, trying to make space for the value that we don't know like could exist, I think is possible, but it's just like again, the transparency needs to be there about things like, and something that we've started doing is like putting space for like adaptive scopes, like
Mm,
as a phase, or
mhm.
um, talking about emergent scope, uh, like that. because so much of this is like understanding that the priorities of the business like could change at any time right now.
Right.
And if you're not aligned with that and you don't give the ability to change with it, right? Everybody, just feel like it's hard to have a healthy relationship,
Right.
right? Um, so it's there is a way to do it, but the tangibility that everybody wants to know, like this is what I'm paying for, this is what I'm gonna get. But it just impresses on the importance of having like reframing the conversation and like this whole like it's not that hard if you can get out of like build mode, right?
Right.
Like simple question shift between like what do you need us to build versus what business outcome do you need to achieve.
Right.
And but what I'm also finding is it's easy to have that conversation and have them not be like they don't know what they're going to get like in the first 3 months, so they're like, all right, what's going to happen, like what are we going to feel in month one.
Right.
And uh and so much of that has been build focused, but if we can, like what I'm seeing now, unified customer views,
Mhm.
right? Even allowing ourselves, giving ourselves permission to call that a quick win,
Mhm.
right? In terms of just documenting it,
Right.
right? So that people can align on something that's going to happen that's a good idea,
Right.
right? Because I think like you mentioned, like, oh, that'll be a quick fix. And then you get in there and like all this downstream impact, right? You think about what it takes to like do a traditional campaign and bring in leads
Mhm.
and have that matter to the business,
Mhm.
right? Like everything that needs to happen after the lead comes in, right? Which is like the rest of the customer facing team,
Mhm.
like matters to what the value of that activity was. And while you can get everybody in the room saying, all right, yeah, we do need more leads. Yep.
Mhm.
But then it's on one team to go do that. And then we're like, oh, well, there's a blocker here and I'm not in charge of that other team.
Right.
So the importance of finding outcomes that at least make it easy for the leader or
Mhm.
like the decision maker that needs to be bought in so that they can get other people bought in,
Right.
right? So that they can move around. Because that's where the emergence comes from. Like, and that's why traditionally there's these long like discovery processes that nobody likes, right? Because
Mhm.
it's like, have we figured out all the gotchas ahead of time and who's in charge of what and when, and who's going to have impact, right? That's like a 6 month
Mhm.
thing when there's multiple teams involved, and nobody wants to wait for that.
Right.
But it doesn't mean you get to skip it, right? You still have to figure that out,
Right.
right? Um, and that's where I think I'm onto something in terms of finding an outcome that everybody can agree on, but
Mhm.
also like not over promising in terms of like, yeah, we're going to get you a unified customer view like inside of a month, right? It's
Right.
unlikely, but we can figure out what it is,
Right.
right? And then say, all right, we're 10% of the way there, we're 50% of the way there. And then now everything that comes after, we can have productive like conversations
Right.
about, right? And it's
Right.
kind of like um embracing the fact that it's going to change. Like there's going to be changes instead of trying to protect from changes.
Right.
And it's a dramatic difference. And I think a part of the value of AI right now is you don't have to make like decisions based on having done the work already. Like,
Mhm.
okay, we've got something working, so let's spend our time over here
Mhm.
instead. Like I remember the first time I used Claude to make properties in HubSpot.
Mhm.
It was like 100 properties. And then I continued talking to Claude. I remember like some new requirement and was like, oh man, we got to redo all his properties. And he was like, yeah, we do. You want me to do that now? It's like, yeah, sure. He's like, done in 5 minutes.
Right.
Right. like, and that's where I started to figure out like this world of like tech debt based like decision making.
Mhm.
Basically, like we just don't have to do that
Right.
anymore. Um,
Sure.
so like, how are you? I guess from that perspective, like, have you, um, let's say, like maybe some advice about like we have to have some kind of scope,
Mhm.
um, with some foundation, but creating the space for this flex. Like,
Mm.
what are you seeing like be successful out there to kind of support this?
I think it kind of comes back to a point you made about quick wins, where people kind of, I feel like a lot of people, the connotation is a quick win is like some separate, discrete thing that's like low hanging fruit and not really related to what we're doing, but it's a quick win. Um, and if you can reframe that to be more of like what you were saying, like we're 10% of the way there, or we're, we're 20% of the way towards this ultimate goal. And in order to do that, in order to be able to quantify progress in that way, you have to do a ton of education for the client about like what the system is going to look like what the system needs to look like in order to achieve that outcome, so that you can say, you know, because a lot of times, in the first couple of weeks of an engagement, I'm doing a ton of stuff, but it's all on the back end, and it's like data that no one cares about. Like, I made hundreds of properties and associations and custom objects, and now everything is like talking to each other how it needs to be, but like that, I can't put a bow on that. Like, and
Right.
nobody's gonna like log into their portal and be like, oh, Erin made me a bunch of properties, hooray. Like,
Right.
that's just not
Value delivered.
right. But if you can explain why that's valuable,
Yes.
if you do a better job of explaining, this is the foundation, this is 10%, the next 20% is going to be you being able to see this data, the next 20% is going to be automating it, like just breaking it out to where the quick wins don't seem disjointed. Like,
Mhm.
the quick wins are in line with the direction that we're going, and they're not necessarily quick. It's just, it is the win that you get at this phase.
Yeah.
Um, because I also don't want to discredit, because sometimes a quick win is a huge impact, and it almost does it a disservice to kind of use this term. um like, just because you can do something quickly doesn't mean it's not like hugely impactful. So yeah, I think as far as advice, honestly, I think educating the client as much as possible, like being able to speak to being able to speak both languages, essentially. Like, you can speak the technical, here's tactically what we're going to execute, versus what that means for the client, and being able to bridge that for them, so that, because at the end of the day, our clients are reporting to someone for the most part. Some of them are the CEOs, but like for the most part, they've got somebody on the board, some investor, somebody in the C-suite that wants a a memo that they can read in under 5 minutes, that tells them you're doing a great job. And so I also kind of see a lot of my job in these engagements is like equipping the team that's kind of facilitating the work to communicate that back up the chain, just so now we've got executive buy-in. Now the executives are talking about it on monthly calls. Now you kind of have to push it upstream so that it comes back down.
Yeah.
And and so I think a lot of it really comes down to change management and being able to communicate really well throughout that process. And that process is messy, and people don't like it. People do not like change. And so my advice would be to lean in to empathy in that process, and education would be my two biggest points there.
Yeah. No, yeah, so much of what we're trying to do here with all these pillars and all this content is give everybody kind of a language refresh so that they can, so that we can help them go up the chain so that the chain can come back down with like language that matters, language that people can align on. Because what often happens, like when we go the outcomes route, it's like, okay, well, we want to grow like by X, or we want to hit this dollar amount.
Right.
Okay, if that's the only outcome that anybody can understand, then guess what happens underneath that? Like that's where it's leads and deals and closed one, and like that's
Right.
the only stuff that makes sense,
Mhm.
right? And that's where it starts to drive the quick wins. And I think what I agree with that, like getting better at finding the real time to value that is fast, but then making sure it lines up with the plan instead of deciding what the plan will be.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
that's where, if we think about past efforts, at least when I was in manufacturing, it was like Google Ads, always,
Mhm.
always the first ask.
Mhm.
Right. Never a thought of what the landing page needs to look like,
Mhm.
what we were going to do after that lead came in. Right. But then we got to deal with it once the Google ads are hitting. So then all the strategy becomes supporting that quick win, right?
Right.
And that's really how this stuff like gets built out.
Mhm.
And so whether it's inline or not, like good to, like if somebody's saying like, hey, you're the person that can get this done, probably just takes a couple of days and it's going to have a huge impact on the business. It's a good trust building like element for sure. But don't let that like guide the strategy,
Right.
right?
It's very much like putting the cart ahead of the horse in that situation, where it's like your quick win is really just adding problems down the road or like setting you up for doing a lot more work that is not as quick, to support the original idea. I've seen that happen so many times too, where it's like the metric that we want to focus on is leads, so let's turn up traffic. It's like, well, that's one lever. And this kind of goes back to like outcomes, like requirements are different. Like one lever could be turning up traffic. If you have a really great conversion rate, yeah, increased volume will help. If your conversion rate is trash because the content messaging doesn't line up with the ads that you're running.
Yeah, like linking Google ads to the homepage.
Right. Like you might as well be setting money on fire. Like that is not going to move the needle for you. And I think that's why I gravitate so much to just RevOps in general. Because when anybody tells me like, I want to fix this number, in my head, I'm seeing the bow tie and I know all the different numbers along that route and where the issue could actually be. Because it's rarely just that, you're not running enough ads or something like, like it's rarely that straightforward. And so I think anytime somebody gives me a number, anytime somebody gives me anything, I kind of break it down into whatever the smallest component parts could possibly be, and then kind of work my way back up to like, okay, is this the actual number, or do we need to be looking at these other things? So yeah, just being able to align around numbers with the system in mind, I think is why I just love RevOps so much. It just gives you the ability to say, hey, let's zoom out here. Let's not think in a vacuum. Let's not like silo ourselves. Yeah, it's better outcomes for everyone in that case.
Yeah. And defining those outcomes. And like looking at the first bullet here, like defining success in terms of business impact rather than service delivery metrics. Like a lot of times, especially now, like business impact, like teams working together, like
Mhm.
more, right? Aligned teams, like marketing and sales alignment, no, commonly known as the number one problem.
Mhm.
Guess what? That's really hard to measure, right? But when you can see it in practice, like you feel it, right? Versus finding these metrics. So it's definitely a skill to try and translate, what the system, like the kinds of outcomes that the system can provide for.
Mhm.
Um, and I've found like trying to create, like not making it about the tool, but doing the tool work enough
Mhm.
to make sure we can start working with humans in a way
Mhm.
that everybody's taking responsibility for what's happening, right?
Right.
So very important.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, I think everybody wants to automate some process because AI can do XYZ. And I do love building automations. I'm not gonna lie. But my mind always goes to, okay, then what can the human do instead? Like if the human is not manually entering all the CRM data, is not manually deduplicating stuff from, coming in from the landing page. Um, what can they kind of pivot to that's going to bring more value? Because I think that is what's truly like transformational in a business. Most people can automate stuff, especially these days. AI can automate most of your stuff. But if you don't enable your team to then really get the most out of their time that's freed up by the AI, if they're spending all their time debugging or tracking down things, um, then you haven't unlocked the full value there. And I think that is a piece that gets missed a lot, but I think it's critical to the change management part of it,
Yeah.
because you can come in and say, hey, I'm going to automate all your work for you, and people are like, please don't, I like my job. um,
Right.
but if you say, I'm going to automate all the stuff that you don't want to do, so that you can spend more time doing what you probably got into this job for in the first place. You can do more strategy, more brainstorming, more talking to people, face to face, even.
Yeah. Internally and externally, right?
Right.
Like communication has always been the thing that we get to later.
Right.
And it's one of the most important things And yeah, that's a lot of what you're saying is why, like, the fifth stage of the value path, like, it changed it from customer to value creator,
Mhm.
because, like, there's such a cycle of, like, not understanding what the person is really needs to accomplish, like, in the moment that we're working with them, both internally and externally,
Mhm.
right? And when we can just use labels for things where somebody can look at it and be like, yeah, that's me.
Mhm.
That's what I need to do right now. That's the journey I'm on right now. I haven't been a part of this process at all. And
Mhm.
you're bringing in this new software, and you think I trust you just because we're a customer and I'm paying you. That's like, nope. So even though you're gonna help with all the things that I hate, those things give me a job.
Right.
And if, like, so if we can position it to say, like, that person needs to create value, they're a value creator, like, all of a sudden the conversation can change, like, the way it needs to be, like, because we're gonna implement, and that thing that we're gonna automate, like that email about tracking information.
Mhm.
It's like, how much value are you creating right now, that being the one sending that email, right?
Right.
Versus, and this idea is gonna stick with me for a long time. At the last gig that I had, you know, the the order management manager, she was like, "Man, that would be really cool. I had this idea, like, to send out these onboarding packages, right, to customers. Like,
Mhm.
we would add this and this, and it's like just a brilliant idea
Mhm.
and no time. Like, nobody's got any time for it
Mhm.
because they're doing data entry, because they're saving PDFs and then editing PDFs and then uploading them as images and just all this stuff, right?" And it's like, that idea is what, now, not only you give that person a chance to have, like, a say in the matter, but also it's super high value activity
Right.
that starts to get done, right? And so in that moment, if you decide, like, oh, we're just going to do this now, we could help, like, put that customer, onboarding package together. And if we all decide that that's going to create a lot of value in the moment, like, let's do it. Let's make it a priority. Let's make space for that,
Right.
right? So often it's like the people that are concerned for, like, for good reason, um like, especially the customer facing team, they always have ideas for how
Mhm.
to do better for customers,
Right.
and again, internally and externally,
And I think
right?
that's so crucial for business owners, C-suite, leadership to understand. It is like your most valuable asset are the people closest to the problem you're solving. And most of the time, that is not you at the top. Like, most of the time, that's people with, like, boots on the ground who are talking to clients, who are entrenched in the processes to get things done. Like, that is your gold mine. Like, the AI is secondary to, like, the AI is what enables you to see those ideas come to life. But the idea has to come from a person who has been facing this problem. Um, and yeah, like, because I've done this at several places where, we implement a solution. We've got the new CRM. It's all set up. I've automated everything I can think of. And then one of the salespeople comes to me and is like, I would really love if I could just do this one thing without switching screens. And it's like, yeah, I never would have thought of that, because I'm not in it every day, but you are, and that's a brilliant idea. And that's how you start to see that like iterative improvement, because now suddenly everybody's got just like a little more time and they're starting to see that it can work too. Like that's the other critical piece is like, oh, my life is getting easier. Well, it could be even easier if we did this. And then it becomes more of like a collaboration where I'm not, the tech person who's just like handing down orders of like, you must use the CRM in this way. It's like, I'm setting up the systems that make your life easier. And if you just tell me what else you need, it can continue to go that way for, really forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think people need to understand that the real gold mine is the people working on the problem every day.
Yeah. I like to call them human context engineers.
Love that.
Started there. Hey guys, it's the thing, like it far and away the number one underutilized resource in most companies right now as they look for AI to come in and solve these problems. Like just
Right.
ask the humans that are close to the
Right.
problem.
Right.
So we're gonna keep helping you do that as we move forward with the series. Let's see which commitment we're talking about next week. Enabling natural flow rather than controlling it.
This is a good get
Yeah, that will be a
my
fun
physics
one.
brain going, and like fluid dynamics and path of least resistance. Oh, I love it.
Indeed,
It all makes so much sense. So that'll be a fun one.
it does. I look forward to it, and I thank you for the awesome conversation today.
Yeah, thank you.
And until next time, everybody have a great week. Thanks, Erin.
Yeah, thanks, y'all.